Hi, my name is Kelly, and I am so excited to have a conversation with Pearl today.
Hey everybody, it's Pearl Chiarenza, the owner and founder of Women's Successful Living and your host of Conversations with Pearl. And I, as always, am so excited to bring some powerful women to our episodes. So grab your cup of tea, cup of coffee, or cold brew and sit back and enjoy our conversation today. With us today, I have, in addition to being a mom, business executive at GoodLeap, a multi-billion dollar fintech company, best-selling author and influencer is Kelly Resendez. She is a true leader empowering women to live a life of abundance. And who does not want to do that? As a co-owner of Go Abundance Women, a membership organization for women dedicated to achieving greatness and abundance, Kelly is passionate about helping others adopt an abundance mindset and overcome self-sabotage to achieve their goals. She believes, like I do, that joy and success goes hand in hand and has dedicated her life to helping women find both. Through her popular book, Big Voices, and her Women Empowered Network, Kelly shares her strategies and tools to inspire and empower women to think differently and achieve all they desire. Oh my gosh, this is going to be so much fun, Kelly. I'm so excited to have you on the show. Welcome.
Yes, thank
You're
you.
welcome. So I like to do something fun, and that is that I like to go back to when you were a little girl when we start the show. I love to go back and think about, when we were little, our teachers and our moms and dads, like, what do you want to be when you grow up? Like, what's your big thing? And whether it's a nurse, a teacher, the president of the United States, whatever that is, right, for you, like thinking about what
Yeah,
that was for you as that little girl and
yeah,
how does it relate to what you're doing today? So
yeah.
walk us back, take us
Wow.
back to little Kelly and tell us what little Kelly wanted to be and how does that what the adult Kelly is doing today.
What a thought-provoking question, and probably one of my favorite things to talk about. I talk a little bit about our little you and how, she rides shotgun with us most of our life, and until we do some of the deeper healing and understand how heavy our programming is from such a young age, most of us live pretty, I would say mediocre lives until we really get out of that. So I'll be 100% honest with you. I knew I wanted to be a boss. I was the bossiest little girl around. There was not a shortage of confidence. If the teacher wanted help, if anyone wanted help, it was pick me. Like I wanted to be the center of attention. And honestly, I did not care what that meant. So as a young age, it was kind of, I wanted to be whatever I thought was important. So it was a politician, it was a doctor, it was a lawyer. There were a lot of different things, but what I know to be true was I really wanted to be a boss. And that has definitely shown up for me in my life today. Although, once I had what I would say is my awakening from really my old programming about 20 years ago, for me being a boss today, just it shows up in so many different ways. It's not about bossing people around, it's supporting people, helping them, reach their highest potential and whatnot. So, when I look back at that little me, she was definitely in her own head a lot because she cared a lot about what other people thought. And that's been another big piece of what I've let go of, Pearl.
Okay, I just love you called it little you. I just love that the little me, little you, because you're right. That inner child. I love when I coach the women that I work with. I'm like, last week I talked with one lady and we were talking about her situation, what was happening in her life, and I said, okay, listen, before we can do anything else, we gotta heal that little girl inside of you. And she broke down in tears. She's like, I have worked with therapists. I've been to so many different modalities for help. And nobody ever taught me about healing the little girl inside of you. I'm like, yeah, you need to forgive her. It's like, this isn't your fault. Like she that's what she grew up in. I love
Yeah.
that you touch base on that because it's so true. Like that inner child, she is with us the whole way. I mean, what we hear when we're little carries us and affects our mindset and our sabotaging and how we look at ourselves. And, it develops the people pleaser, the sticklers, the controllers, all those things that, affect our mindset. I love that you identified her and you called her that name. It's so powerful.
Yeah, well, most of us don't realize, like when you talk about forgiveness, is that we spend a lot of time forgiving other people, or
Right.
we spend a lot of time continuing to be a victim to
Right.
other people, and then also to our own choices. A lot of
Yeah.
women carry shame around.
Yeah.
And when you think about how heavy that is on the little you, whatever you've experienced in your life, whether you had really severe trauma or, you know, I definitely lived a privileged life, but I still had trauma. I think we all have trauma from, you know, things that friends say or other things like that. But when we get to this place of really acknowledging that all that our little you wants is just love and just absolute forgiveness, acceptance, and non judgment, because we're all here to make mistakes and we're all here to learn. And we do not want to remain, you know, in a prison to the past mistakes that we've had. And one of my favorite lines that you know, I would say has really been getting me through a lot of, you know, the last 5 or 6 years is from it's actually from a religious song, which is the world's not falling apart, it's falling into place. And yet, most of us don't experience suffering that way. Most of us experience it from that victim, like it's happening to me instead of it's happening for me. And when I look back at my little you and all the little things that she endured that were painful that she didn't want to sit in, so she was a really good distractor. So I think all of us, like you said, have this preferred sabotage method or distraction method, and mine was hyper productivity. So mine showed up as being super successful and an overachiever, where somebody else maybe turned to drugs or food or so many different other, you know, there's so many different avenues that most of us seek to avoid whatever we're feeling in that moment. And so one of the exercises that I do quite regularly, Pearl, is when I am experiencing some sort of visceral feeling in this moment, is the acknowledgement that there has to be some little me in there that didn't want to go through what I was going through. And then I try to really go back in meditation or in silence and just hold space for what it must have felt like to be that distractor. Because again, she used to just go, be productive, or I would eat a lot too, when I was younger, and numb myself to whatever it was.
Yeah, I was thinking about when you were talking about, you know, when you were little and I was, when we were doing the inner work. I remember I have every Sunday evening, we have what's called the Shira League. And it's a group that I created during COVID. I saw so many women online were like, oh my gosh, my kids are home all day and I didn't want to be a teacher and now I have to teach them. And then, you know, my spouse is home, like everybody's in the house. I called it the Calgon take me away moment, but I'm not allowed to leave my
Yeah,
home, right? And so they were all stressed out. So I started this like, let's do a 30-day self-care challenge. Where every day for 30 days, you had to do something for yourself. And
yeah,
so on Sunday evening, we would meet and talk about what did you do this week? How did it feel? You know, we'd have this little mini meetings, right?
yeah,
And it's continued on. Like it's a great way to end your week. It's a great way to start your week. But I remember I was doing, I had a co-host with me, my friend who she did meditations, and we're like, we were both going, let's work with the group on the inner child, like the inner child. And so I'm telling you, Kelly, these girls fought us on, like, I had one go, my life was great as a child. I didn't have any trauma. I'm like, you had to have something that somebody said or somewhere, somehow, because this one person that said it, she always was like the victim, right? Everything happens to me. I'm like, somewhere's in your little life, that little girl, she, you know, felt like everything happens, like the victim showed up, right?
yeah,
We could not get them to get past that mindset of like, there is a little girl inside you that has, you know, two of them really bought into it. The other ones were like, so we actually stopped because we're like, if you can't buy into this and understand that there is a little you inside there that has been through things, or whether you didn't have, if you had no trauma, life was perfect, which I don't know anybody's life's 100% perfect, but if you did, there's still something that somebody said or did, right? And I was like, to one girl, I said, so your life was perfect. How's your life today? Not so perfect. Okay, let's talk about that. But it was like this whole block. So we actually stopped working on it. And it's funny because like
wow,
when I talked to the client I mentioned earlier, when I said we're gonna look at it's like she had tears rolling down her face going, I've never ever worked on her. And I'm like, we're gonna do that. Like we're gonna work on her. And it's just it's so powerful when we recognize, like even today when I work with the women that I work with today that have littles, I'm like, you need to be mindful of what you say and or do in front of them because they emulate us. We don't think about it, but they do. They emulate us. They hear, you know, you tell them things, go stand in the corner because, you know, the adults are talking. You're basically saying, you know, my voice isn't important, you know, or what have you. Somebody shared with me today that they have a somebody who said recently had a baby and the baby's not a month old and they're doing the what do they call the method where they cry, you don't pick them up? I'm like, at a month old? I'm like, I don't know. 3 months old, I remember doing that, but at a month old, no, they're trying to communicate. That's their way to communicate at such a little tiny age. And we are agreeing with one each other. I'm like, well, we don't know what they teach today or what people are, everybody's Googling everything. But I like that, that you share that you remind us that no matter how old we are, there's still that little girl in there and that you hold space for her when things come up. Because especially like when you talk about, that higher achiever, sometimes we have to calm the high achiever down and let her know, enjoy what you just achieved, like live in the moment. And sometimes we forget to live in that moment. We want to go chase the next thing, let me get the next award. Sometimes people want to do that. Or me as a people pleaser growing up, I was always taking care of my sister and brother because my dad was off to war and my mom was working and taking care of us. So I was the little mommy in third grade, taking care of my brother and sister. So all growing up, it was like, oh, mom and dad said I need to do that. So I never, everybody goes, you don't play sports as a kid? I'm like, I never played sports. I didn't do sports till high school when I did soccer. So I never played sports, but my brother did. And, as he got older, but I didn't have that opportunity. So, now I'm like, I want to have fun all the time. Like now my little girl's like, let's go do, yeah, I won't do heights, you guys, but I will, I will do fun things, but I love that you share that. And I want to touch base. Like, I want to go into like, in your bio, we talk about how you empower women to live the life of abundance. Women, we struggle with that. We struggle, like I said, the people pleaser. We feel like, we need to put our kids first, our job first, our spouse first. If you don't have kids, like walk us through what that looks like for some of the women. And what are you seeing as
Yeah,
maybe is there a commonality in there?
absolutely. Pearl, if you don't mind, like right before I touch on that, I want to go back to something that you really said. So, for the women that don't want to call it a little you, I want you to just think about it as a filing cabinet in your brain. And so I mean, whatever you call it, it exists. So, one of the greatest gifts that I've had was the ability to really study neuroscience and understand, how sticky our brain is. And when you really just start to see your brain the same way you would your laptop or your cell phone, you realize that you are constantly having to upgrade the software that you were given. And the software that you were given is all about survival. It's not about thriving. And so if you don't feel like calling it a little you, just think about it as like a filing cabinet in your brain that stores all the memories from your past. And if you didn't do a great job in that memory, which means you didn't really allow yourself to fully feel the emotion, which is how we release things, is
Right.
really letting go and trusting that everything's going to be okay, then we do want to kind of go back and we want to reprogram our brain so that it feels this abundance that is possible. So kind of switching over to that.
I
So
love that you said, before we move on to my question, I love that you said that. It reminds me of a conversation I had with somebody who had, addiction in their life and they were like, kind of struggling and they're like, I'm struggling. I go, you have to understand you're sort of like almost like I call it almost like rewiring your brain, but your brain still has that file cabinet going, hey, we did this and that felt pretty good. So I said, your fight kind of is like to keep the file cabinet closed because that's not a good cabinet to have open, right? And he was like, oh, I never thought about it like that. I'm like, yeah, you're kind of trying to close that cabinet because those are bad habits you don't want to, you don't want to revisit, but they're always going to be there. So when the urge is to open the file cabinet, like where are you going to? Where are you going for support? Whether it's a sponsor or, a coach, a therapist, whatever that is, like some of those things to get there. So I'm glad I love that you share that and remind us about that because I always look at things like that file cabinet in the back of my brain.
yeah.
Yeah, that's
Well, and you said something that, your brain thinks, oh, it was good. We can do it again. It does the same thing with bad. It doesn't care about good or bad. People don't realize we get the same amount of dopamine almost when we have anxiety as we do a lot of higher level accomplishment emotions. So we have to really do a good job of understanding how to really use our brain to support our higher vision and our goals for our life. And most people that are listening are not where they really want to be. Let's be honest. Maybe they are in their career, but they don't feel great about it. Maybe they're married. They always wanted to be married, but they're not happily married. Maybe they have children, but they don't feel as connected to them. And so the first thing that you really want to do as you go down this path to getting into abundance is be really honest with yourself about where you are and then how you want to feel. That's one of the greatest things that you can do Instead of starting with what you want to do or you want to accomplish, start with how you want to feel. Like, I want to wake up in the morning. When I literally open my eyes, I'm like, thank you, God, for another day. Like, I am so excited to be here and to serve you and to get to do the things that I do. That's not how most people wake up, right? And so, the difference between abundance and scarcity, and what I would tell you is that although we call it abundance mindset, it really is a way of being. It's a daily way of experiencing life. So abundance is always there's more than enough. You're the creator of your own success. Opportunities or challenges are just there for you to learn and grow. And life happens for you, where scarcity says life happens to me, and I can be a victim. I can be a complainer. I look at the external to be able to explain why I feel the way that I do. In abundance, you take radical ownership for how you feel yourself. And so the greatest, once you're like, okay, I choose to be in abundance. Like, when you like, who wouldn't want to be in abundance, right? Who wouldn't want to be grateful all the time? Who wouldn't want to be radiating? You start to see that success is an inside out job. So you start to magnetize your business. You start to magnetize your children, your relationships, because people just see you as being, love, and just you're very emotionally stable, and you have the self-awareness. There are times I'll honestly be like, I need to go in the naughty corner. Like, I've been traveling for 6 weeks straight. Like, I need to go take a break. I am not showing up as my best self, but I have the awareness in which I really need to do that. And so, you started with, how do people really start? It starts with an awareness of where you are and how you want to feel. Now, if you're feeling depressed, don't put, I don't want to feel depressed. We need to give our brain the positive opposite of that. So I am joy. I am peace. I am contentment, some of these other things. And then I'll give you a few more strategies as we talk today, but that would be the first thing that I would say, is just acknowledge where you are and then come up with a vision for how you want to feel. And one of my recommendations, to show your reticular activator, which is the part in your brain that tells you what to focus on, exactly how it should feel every day. And it's part of my morning ritual.
I love that. It reminds me of when I started working like with affirmations. I remember early on, I was like, oh, I have all the money in my bank account I want to have. And I was like, early on when I was coaching, I was talking with somebody about doing affirmations. We're at an event together at a conference. And she's like, so Pearl, do you really? I'm like, well, no, I guess if you're really asking me, no. She's like, well, so you're telling yourself that, but do you really believe it? I'm like, ooh, that's a good question. So then I started saying, I went to bed and I'm like, I'm going to think about that. And I went to bed, I got up in the morning, and what I started doing was saying, I'm doing activities that are going to bring what I say is, I'm going to do activities today that are going to allow me to bring abundance into my bank account, that will open up opportunities to bring abundance into my bank account. So I started like looking, and then I found myself looking for things to do. I started getting hired to speak. I started, like, more clients were coming to me and things like that. And so I was just like, I went back and told her, we were at something else a few months later. I go, boy, that was really powerful what you said. I really thought about that. And then, like what you said too, is like, I am joy. That's, we lost our son 2 years ago in a tragic car accident at 25. And our younger son is now getting ready to turn 25 in January. So my brain's going, it's like going back and forth with these thoughts. I'm like, well, stop. I still have two boys, but for a little while, they're going to be 25 together, and I watched Nate grow into this amazing young man who, like I said before we got on, he got married between two hurricanes. So it's like, I had the best time of raising two boys together. Right. So I flipped that with my brain, but I love, we do, it's like, I like what you said too about this. It takes the same dopamine to be, stressed out as it does to be happy. Right.
Pearl, the one thing I want to mention, when we're in abundance, it doesn't mean we don't have human suffering. We have real emotion, like sadness and anger and things that actually are an expression of how we feel. And we can be sad and joyful simultaneously. We can be grateful and sad simultaneously, where the lower level vibrations like shame and guilt and blame are the ones that really eat away at your life. And so that's where you have to really work on this balance because, you experienced what I would say is the worst form of human suffering, right? I just lost my niece in August in a car accident as well. She was like a daughter to me for a long time. And the experience shifts. The experience shifts because you are filled with such hope and belief that we will be together again. Like you are filled with this, everything is always working out okay for me. And I am going to be able to, find gratitude even in the pain. And that's really where the big shift is. And so I think most people, I mean, what I want to make sure your audience hears, no one ever taught us that we weren't our thoughts from a young age. No one ever taught us we weren't our emotions. No one taught us strategies to be able to manage self-sabotage and overthinking. And these are things that I really share in my book, Big Voices, because as women, like we do have very consistent thought patterns. And a lot of it is about the people pleasing and the do they like and love me or fear of rejection or fear of success. I think most of us as women fall on a spectrum either of I feel too much or not enough. And we want to be just right. And we're not going to get there until we take responsibility and not blame. I don't blame my parents. I don't blame society and our ridiculous education system that nobody took the time to show me some of these strategies when I was growing up. But I can choose a different path today and then also do the social impact world in the world to try to make it a better place and to change those things.
Yeah, I'm glad you pointed that out too, because that's one somebody said to me not too long ago, and I actually I did a presentation this morning in my network group, and we were talking about, my theme is I'm going to enjoy my journey next year, and so I was like, we're talking, and somebody said, well, how do you stay so strong? And I looked at him, I go, what do you mean strength? Like, what do you
What is
help me
that?
understand? And I said, well, because you have, had this big loss but you still show up. I said, it's a choice. I choose. I said, it doesn't mean as I'm standing right here, right now, talking about it, I don't not miss him, but it's a choice. I'm grateful for the fact that I get to wake up every morning. I get to come and do these things that I love to do. I still get time with my rest of my family, my husband and my son and his now wife. And, and I said, I choose to do that, even though it's hard. I said, but if I allowed myself to just live in the depth of the grief, I would be sitting in a room, probably eating
Yeah.
bonbons all day or something, and just be so unhealthy and unhappy. That's not existing, I said, so it's definitely a choice that I do. And I love what you said too, because when I was talking about that with my husband the other day, I said we were talking about we had a friend going through some stuff and they were getting with a therapist, and he's like, my husband, they used to not talk about the stuff we were growing up. They didn't give us tools to say, when these things happen, mental health and everything. Now we're talking about it. And interesting enough, I remember when our son first passed, my husband, he came home one day. They owned a business, so he was out taking care of stuff for the business. And he came home, and I was like, "So how was your day?" And he was like, "Life." And I was like, going, "Life." I was like, "Oh, let me unpack that for a second." And I came back and I said, "You're missing Matt today, right?" He's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Okay." So now I understand, understanding that language that he's trying to, express how he's feeling and things like that. So, and allowing him that space to, do you want to talk about it? Or, I'm here, like allowing him to feel those feelings. Cause we didn't grow up talking about how do we feel our feelings? How do we handle negative self-talk? We didn't have those conversations, like you said. And they're doing some of that today, which is great, but I think we have a lot more work to do in that area too.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the thing. It's this strong is some of us we have lost our authenticity because, it sounds like you took care of your siblings. I had to take care of my sister from a young age as well. And so when you lose authenticity, you don't, it's not easy to get back to. Like, because we are wired to take care of other people and do all of these other things. And yet, like, one of the big things that I've allowed myself is it's okay if I'm a little crazy sometimes. It's okay if I'm not strong all the time. Like, but I've had to re-educate people around me, Pearl, because the assumption is I always have everything figured out. I don't need anybody, which is just not true. Like, I have to actually ask for help where a lot of other people, you and I might just be able to tell they need help. but I have to ask for it because the people around me are so like they're just so used to me being the one that's always taking care of everything. And so it's an interesting paradigm that those of us that are, I call myself a recovering people pleasing perfectionist.
Yep,
Um,
I'm right there with you. I said
yeah.
I'm a
So
recovering
I've
people
been
pleasing addict.
recovering
Yeah,
and
exactly.
yeah, I love it. I love
It's
it.
so true. So tell us a little bit about Go Abundance Women. Tell us a little
Yeah,
bit about that. We'd love to hear what that
absolutely.
is.
So as I shared, I got into personal growth and development about 20 years ago. I was a top loan officer in my career. So definitely a high income earner and lived a very blessed life on the outside. And as I got into personal growth and development, I'll tell you the first thing that I started with, and I hope this lands for everybody listening, was I read The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle in 2004. And what I really just realized, and it blew my mind, was that I wasn't my thoughts. I had been believing the whole time that I was my thoughts, that that's who I was. And the minute that I disconnected from my thoughts and started to become that watcher of my thoughts, like it changed my life. And now here I am 20 years later. But through this journey, I was reading every day. I was, watching different things. I was going to events. I was doing the work, but I was doing it in isolation. And so what happened is the higher my consciousness level went, the fewer people there were in my world that I was relating to on the level that I wanted to, and that had the same purpose and passion for making the world a better place like I did. And so, I'll be honest, was a victim for a while, and I actually wrote a chapter in my book about learning how to be lonely. And then somewhere along the way, I reminded myself I'm the creator of my own reality. And so I started to, ask around, and there was a men's division of Go Abundance, and we started talking to the men about putting a women's group together, and here we are many years later. So it is a group of ambitious female leaders, and it's a really safe, I would say, community of women all across the nation that want to grow their businesses without sacrifice, that want to have a place that they can get accountability and new ideas and really push themselves out of their comfort zone, while they also have a great place to be able to celebrate and do adventure and fun. And so we're different than some of the other women's masterminds out there. We're focused on whole life success, which is, age defying health and epic adventures and financial freedom and a lot of these other areas of life. So for me, my loneliness, I like laugh today because I'm like, we put you into a pod of 4 to 5 other women that are like-minded, and you meet with them either weekly or bi-weekly. And now I have like the best women that are surrounding me.
That's amazing. Sherry's a thought that I want to ask you, but are they just local to you? Or is it a national thing?
It's national. So we've got members all over, actually all over the world, but the majority of them are in the United States. And, we do have an event coming up. I don't know when this is published, in Puerto Rico. We do allow some guests to attend our events one time, but they're amazing events. So, we've got, I don't know if you know Jen Gottlieb, who's
Mhm.
an amazing speaker and branding person. She's speaking at our next event. We've had Dr. Shafali, Lisa Bilyeu, Ali Webb, and other amazing people that attend those events with us.
That sounds like a lot of fun. Those are some great speakers and attendees. So
Yeah.
Puerto Rico, that's really a lot of fun. So I love that. I love the idea of like collaborating and creating, outside the norm, the
Yeah.
regular network events we're going. So I was actually talking with somebody about that the other day. I'm like, we need something that's sort of like a mastermind, but not a mastermind, that, you can do some good collaboration and help each other grow. And that sounds like that's exactly what you've created there too. So you have chapters all over. And so you're going to, when is the Puerto Rico event?
They're not chapters. So it's just pretty much everyone is enmeshed, and then you're put into these pods of people. So like people in my pod, I have someone in Chicago, someone in Texas, someone in Arizona, someone in Florida. So like they are all over, and
Oh,
somebody in
that's
North
cool.
Carolina
Oh,
too.
that's even cooler.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a lot of fun. That's
Yeah.
awesome. I
But
love
what
that.
I found in my own life, Pearl, is that, you know, I was giving myself permission to not get as big as I felt called to, because, I was comparing, right? And people would
Right.
be like, "What? You're doing what? You're doing what?" And now I'm just like, "Nope. Like, let's go for it. Like, I want to change the world kind of person. I'm really passionate about leadership and world positivity. There's so much pain going on in the world today in terms of making the planet suffer and the people suffer. And that's what, it is definitely a great place that the women elevate me to be able to get out there and do more things too.
I think that's awesome, and even that it's virtual and you can be in places with women all over the world is
All
really
over.
it's
Yeah.
really, really cool. I love
And
that.
most of us have ands in our life, to be honest. Like, we're moms, and or some of us are, and we own real estate, and I invest in tech companies, or I'm also a speaker and a writer and an executive. A lot of us have a lot of ands in our life too, which is cool.
I love that you said we have ands in our life, but that's
Yeah.
yeah, it's so true because we do have many ands in life besides and being a
Yeah.
mom, and which reminds me, like when I first started going on this overcoming people pleasing journey, I took this identity and destiny course, and at the end of 6 weeks, we had to give our I am statement. And I remember sitting there, and my partner in the group, I gave her my statement, and I said I was still all my titles, and she looked at me, she says, "So where you been for 6 weeks? Because I don't know who Pearl is still." And I was like, "Oh, you're right. This people pleasing stuff really sucks." It's like it shows up still, even like after 6 weeks. And once I started going on the journey of figuring out who Pearl was, I was like, okay, I am this, and I get to, I love what you said, the and stuff, and
Yeah.
I'm a mom and I'm a wife, but I
Yeah.
get to do these things I love. So one of the things I was, and when we talk about your bio too, is like helping women, joy and success, how they go hand in hand, and then how you dedicate women to find that. I think oftentimes that's one of the things I notice with my clients is they struggle with that. Well, sort of self-care. Well, if I'm doing, if I'm enjoying myself, then I'm neglecting something, right?
Yeah.
How do you
Yeah.
to those that are listening, how do you help them? How do you help women kind of do that? How do you help them
Yeah.
find some balance and like
Great.
release the guilt?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Well, first of all, make a decision that guilt doesn't need to go in your future adventures with you. That's the first thing. There is a guilt-free path. I'm going to share just with you a couple of the things that I would say about this concept. So, number one, we haven't had a lot of role models to show us what's possible. And so our belief system is rooted in sacrifice. It's rooted in I can't have it all. And so that's part of what more of us out there need to do is to model what's possible to our children, and mentor more and do things out in the world so that people know this. And so it starts with, once you get your vision done for how you want to feel in your life, the next thing that you want to do is really solidify your priorities. Now, everyone's priorities are different. There's no right or there's no wrong. But when you really write your priorities down and get really clear on what your priorities are, I would tell you the best decision is to put your physical and emotional well-being above anyone else. And so we've all heard, you know, pouring from an empty cup or your cup is overflowing. This is an energy game in life. That is what, when I say it's an inside out job, it's all about energy. And if I am going home at the end of the day and I don't have energy for my kids or my sweetheart, then they're going to get the crumbs of what I did. And I might say that my family is a priority, but I'm showing them otherwise. And so when you put your emotional and physical well-being first, what you can really start to see is that, oh, that just means that I'm going to tune in to what creates energy and the right environment for me to thrive. And so part of that is just, it's physical. Like, I need to take care of my gut health. I need to take care of my hormone health, which if you do not have a functional medicine doctor, I would highly recommend that you get one. They are much more thoughtful about preventative. Your Western medicine doctors are more thoughtful about treatment. And there's a big difference between those two. And so there's a lot of misinformation out there as it pertains to hormone health. Go check out my girlfriend, Dr. Betty Murray, on Instagram. She is definitely a trailblazer in the education field. Another book that's awesome is called New Menopause. And it really just shares a lot about hormonal health and how little we really know about it. And then sleep, our body repairs itself, right? When we're sleeping. And if you aren't getting sleep, you're not going to be in that place. It's how is your body processing stress if you have high levels of stress. And because I'm so passionate about female leadership, one of the areas that we really report much higher percentages is around stress. So then what does that mean? If I'm stressed out as an employee, I'm not going to go apply for an executive role. I'm going to think that's more stress. And so I believe as much as we can probably point to some discrimination gender wise, I think we're way more powerful to shift these numbers than we give ourselves credit to. And so, but the three areas that we need to get to, and they're under physical and emotional, are reducing stress, reducing imposter syndrome, and reducing the guilt around work life balance, right? Well, we need to start with our physical and emotional well being in order to address those things because our emotional well being says, I'm not going to feel guilt. Like the greatest decision that you can make when it comes to your priorities and your family or whatnot is just be present wherever you are. Like this multitasking that we think is doing something for us is really damaging our brains and our relationships. So know that you're being sold like a lot of technology knows exactly the habit loops that function in your brain and how addictive your brain is, and they are capturing your attention. And so when you add up, what do you really get from scrolling and watching Netflix or whatever it is? What do you really get? Like it really is not a lot. You're not going to see a lot of value in it. And so again, putting yourself first means that you are choosing to focus on your energy so that you have more to give to your family, to your life partner, to your job, to your purpose, to your finances, all these other things. And so when people say like, "Oh, I can't imagine doing it." I'm like, "You're robbing yourself of like goodness. Like you have to trust me." And I'm happy to have a conversation with any of your listeners because I was the person that was the total opposite of this 20 years ago. I thought I had to put everyone else first because I was getting so much darn significance from it, Pearl. Like so much significance, like focusing on other people. Well, you know what it was? It was avoiding really focusing on myself.
I'm like taking notes over here and everything. So it's so true, especially like and first of all, the functional health. I'm 100% with that. Funny story on that. My husband and I go to the same doctor's office, and so he sees the wife, I see the husband, which is
Yeah,
hilarious. And so I go into my doctor, and I'm like, "Here's a list of the vitamins that I take. Here's the last time I did a thermography because I don't do mammograms." Like I go and I hand him all this stuff, and he's like, "Okay." So one time, my husband, he was like, he was fighting me on taking these vitamins. I have a vitamin line that I carry. And so he was fighting me and I learned it from a functional doctor, all this line that I'm carrying, right? And
yeah,
so he's like, I'm gonna go in and I'm like, I'm going with you because you're not taking these vitamins and you need to take these. And so I go in and she's like, well, Pearl, I don't believe in vitamins. I was like,
yeah,
are you kidding me? Like, I'm like, are you kidding me? I said, so right then I'm like, oh, you're a pharmaceutical meds. You just want to treat, you don't want to.
yeah,
So, and he had been on the same med for like a long, long time. So when I went to go see the husband one time, I said, well, I saw the wife because the husband wasn't in one time. And she looked at my blood work. She goes, oh, you need to start taking this medicine because something with I think my cholesterol or something. And I looked
yeah,
at her and I said, okay. And she goes, you're going to ask my husband first, aren't you? I go,
yeah,
yeah, I am. And so when I went to go see him, he's like, so you were a conversation in my house a couple weeks ago. I'm like, oh, really? He's like, yeah. She said, you're going to ask me a question. I go, yeah, doc, do I really need to take this? He goes, listen, it's bad on me. I really want to encourage you to take it. But here's what you are taking now. If you'll do some more of this, I'll work with you. But if you don't have it in line before, I'm like, okay, I got you. Right. And so I love that you talk about functional health because it's so important. It's also like with what I do, like somebody had said, I hold these retreats every year. Right. And somebody had said, you need to have this, a trauma therapist at your retreat. I'm like, that's not what my retreat's about. If somebody needs that after the retreat, we'll make sure they have that. And I was like, listen, I said, I am a coach. I'm not a therapist, but can I just tell you how many therapists refer their clients to me? Because they only get this small window to work with their clients and they can go, hey, go to Pearl and I want you to ask her about working on these things. And we can spend more deep dive into it. and then they bring back, their homework to the
Yeah.
therapist. And so,
Amazing.
it's like, you have to take control of all that, like take control of your
Yeah.
health and be part of it. But when you're talking about putting self first, I mean, I remember like I would show up, like you said, for everybody. It was like, oh, that's, if I don't, I would feel so guilty. And I really had to, like I was saying about that identity and destiny course, I really had to tune into, like you said, tune into Thrive. I had to tune into who I wanted to be because I was, as you said, stressed out. My family wanted something, like they were truly getting the crumbs. And I was like, I got to figure this out because this is not who I want to model for my boys. I don't want them to think this is how it is. And so when I started really working on putting myself first and communicating with my family, listen, this is what I'm going to start doing. I don't want you to think I'm being selfish, but I need to start, like, I might go in my room and read a book. I might sit in the front porch swing before I even walk in the door from the day or what have you. But it's just, I've got to take time to pour into me so that I can be present for you. And the
I
really
love
cool thing was they were like, we started doing things together. So my oldest and I, we started going get mani-pedis together, and we would have amazing conversations about anything and everything to do
love it.
with him. And then my younger son and I would do movies and stuff. In fact, I'm meeting him on Friday this week to go and have dinner with him because I just want to check in and be like,
Yeah.
now he's married, so I don't get to see him as much, that kind of thing, but still have our time together. And but I like what you said about putting first the energy, how it puts into our
Yeah.
life and how it
I mean,
changes,
we're energetic beings, and that's
yeah,
the thing people don't realize. It's like, people might say, "Man, you're so lucky. You don't know what it's like. You're this, you're that." And I'm like, "No, this isn't by accident. This is
right,
because I literally embody self-love.
right,
Like, body putting myself into this place of trust." And so my big prayer every day is like, here's my vision, or bring me something more. Like, guide
right,
me, like show me. Like, I've really let go of a lot of, attachments that I used to have to outcomes. And now I just watch my brain reward me for being on the journey. And that's what part of that neuroscience that's important, that if you're not feeling great, there are things that you can do. And they don't tell us that the majority of our serotonin is made in our gut. And so if you're not taking care of your gut, or you have high inflammation, like, yeah, all your risks for everything go up. Like, your body can't take care of itself. So we want to make our bodies like one of the most important, things that we pay attention to, including brain health. Like, people go to a psychiatrist and they don't even get an image and they're put on medication. Like, come on, be more thoughtful about that. You would not let somebody, like, you just wouldn't do that. You'd be like, you're not going to let him put your arm in a cast without an x-ray. And yet you're going to let them put you on a mind altering medication without an image. Like, I think this is the time, Pearl, for a mass awakening, that we need to take responsibility. Do not trust, like, do not trust all of the things that we used to trust to protect us. Like, I'm sorry, but the FDA and big pharma and Western medicine and, all these people, because they're businesses. They've got shareholders. They've got to make sure that that they've got their revenue, and they've got their, lobbying that get the things done that they want to get done. And so I just think that it's time for us to wake up. And this is what I want to speak to women about right now, because I am so passionate about this. So many people have been fired up about this election. That is not what you need to get fired up about. You need to get fired up about two things. Number one, most of the issues that we have politically are all about education. Like, I don't want to talk about abortion. I want to talk about preventing teenage pregnancy and why girls are not protecting themselves and then having to go through this traumatic pain that they do if they do that. The next thing, I mean, I would say, is that we're the most powerful consumers in the world. If we want things to change, all we have to do is change our buying habits. That's it.
Those are two really good, powerful. I totally agree with you on that. Those are really powerful reminders because we don't talk about we don't talk about those things, and we need to have conversations
Oh, I do
around
now.
that. Yeah, people, not enough people do. Yeah, and I like what you said. That's why when I went with my husband to his doctor, I'm like going, and I walked out, and he looks at me, and goes, "See, I told you." I go, Yeah, she told you what you wanted to hear, and you know I'm right. And I'll call Dr. Cheryl right now and put her on the phone with you, And funny thing is, some of the things I've been telling him have come true. So he's like, okay, I'll do what you say to do, I'll
Good.
try that now, but I'm like, I push it. And it's because like you said, I grew up like we went to the doctor, mom brought us to the doctor and all that stuff, but I want to control what I'm doing with my body. And it's funny you talk about about putting us on drugs and things like that. My son, Matt, he struggled with some, he was adopted, so he struggled with identity. He was the only only mixed child in his biological family and our family. So he was struggling with the mixed race and that. And so we brought him into somebody thinking, oh, he's going to, have conversations with them, talk about his feelings and help him work through this. No, he just gave us a script. And I looked at him and I said, and I was like, what? Like, actually went with my husband's, and I'm going with him next week. So we went next week and we walked in and he writes out the script again. I go, excuse me, are you not going to have a conversation about his feelings? And I mean, he's like, no, that's not what I do. If he wants that, I'm like going, oh my gosh. So I took him out of there. I'm like, no, we're not doing this. This is not what we're doing. So I love that you remind us too about we have, taking control of, of our health and being and part of that, because it's so important. It's really,
Yeah.
I think like it's really, I think it's our job to be like having a conversation, because like we said earlier, the doctors only get 10-15 minutes with us. And like you said, people are coming in and they're offering stuff to promote or whatever. So I love that you reminded about this. So now if we have a little bit of time left here, we're doing pretty good. But if you could give three strategies or 3 points that the women need to like walk away from today,
Yeah,
that they're like, oh my God, this is great, but I don't know where to start. What are three
absolutely.
things that you might suggest for them?
Yeah, the first thing is to awaken to the idea that you're not your thoughts, and that you need to have a thought management strategy. You're welcome to check out my book Big Voices, but happy to send it if anybody wants. I have it on my website as well, just at bigvoicesrise.com. And so that's one of them, is just recognize that you're not your thoughts. Number two, choose choose the mindset that's going to support the life you want to create. Hit Control Alt Delete on the mindset that you have now and really just choose abundance. Now, my next book coming out in 2025 is all on abundance practices. So hopefully everybody will be able to check out that New York Times bestseller that's going to be coming out. And I'm just putting that into the world right now because it's going to happen. And then the third thing I would say is build community. So would love for them to check out, goabundancewomen.com. Happy to have a conversation with you about how we build community, but doing life in a silo or feeling like you're the only one or doing it alone is just, it's not healthy. And in order to get next level, sometimes we don't want to be the smartest person in the room. We want to feel supported. We've got all sorts of programs for women as well. Even if you don't come into the Go Abundance community, have other ideas or build community around you. Go pop on Facebook today, like, hey, I want to connect with 5 women and start a coffee or a prayer group or whatever it is. Just build community. Yeah.
Those are great. Like I love the reminder, we're not our thoughts, because oftentimes we allow them to control us. We allow them
Yeah.
to that help us make decisions. I remember last year, I had a family member here and something had happened. And no kidding, I walked up the steps and I actually thought, I'm so glad this didn't happen to my friend. And that I was the one it happened to, which sounded crazy. It was a terrible thing because I don't think her victim mentality would have been able to handle it. It's like, because her thoughts are still controlling her. But and then the mindset, like choosing the mindset, I like Control Alt Delete. I do that sometimes when
Yeah.
like with my boundaries and stuff. I always talk about like with boundaries, you set them up, people want to break your boundaries. I'm like, no, you're not deleting my boundaries. They're staying right there where they're at. And I'll let me decide when I want you to come in outside my boundaries. But and then building community, that our Shira League that I did during COVID, it's continued on. Like I said, we meet every Sunday evening, and it's in your PJs, whatever. It's on Zoom. It's not recorded, and it's so much fun because like a lot of times, most of the time it's all uplifting, educational. We're pouring it into one another. But sometimes it's like, I've had a crappy week. How can we support you? And how, change the whole mindset. And it's really, I love the building community. I love having that community. And ironically, I was talking about this when I was at a conference this morning presenting. I shared how the community that I built during COVID, I never realized that I was going to need that community one day. And so when my son did pass, like that was a community that was like, I went to them, they poured into me. So it, having that support is, especially as women, it's so, so powerful. So I appreciate you giving us those three things. So
Oh,
I want to ask, we're going to do a little shift here for a second. We're going to talk a little bit more about self-care. Kelly, tell us, what are two of your favorite things to do for self-care for
yeah.
yourself?
Number one, first thing when I do when I wake up is I do my morning ritual, and it's non-negotiable. 365 days out of the year. I'm very faith-based, so I read my devotional, the Bible. I look at my goals and my vision and my purpose and my priorities and my bucket list every day. And then I journal. And if I'm working on a new book, that's what I do. So that would be the first thing, is really just to adopt a morning ritual. It is really just cementing I come first, right? Brendan Burchard, one of my mentors, talks about email as like other people's priority. And most people check their phone and they start doing rather than really focusing on being. A couple of the reasons is we want to fire our reticular activator up. So when you look at the power of I am statements, whether you believe it or not, you want your brain to focus. So you might not be joyful all the time, but there are moments of joy. And it's when we focus on those and we really just focus on things that are satisfactory. The second thing that I would say is up level your vocabulary. That's one of the practices that I really share a lot is around how powerful language is. And so if we're using words like overwhelm, busy, good, our brain's like, doesn't like it. But like up level, like my life is extraordinary. Like it has been an absolute blessing to be here with Pearl. Like I've had an absolute blast, or, my life's been a wild adventure the last few months traveling. It's really just giving you different feelings. And then I think you asked for three, right? And so the third thing that I would say, because that self-care, when you think about language, you are caring for yourself because you're giving your brain instructions on how to manage your hormones that day. And hormones, I mean like dopamine and serotonin and your feel good, your oxytocin hormones too. And then the third thing is just again to take time in the day for creativity. And so most of us, whether we're working, we really don't spend enough time in creativity, which is really where the birth of innovation comes and the ideas and other things. And so we don't want to just get in this to-do list, checklist world that most of us live in. We want to just leave ourselves a little bit more space for creativity or daydreaming so that our next greatest ideas come to the surface.
I love that. That my routine is get up in the morning. I love like you with reading and devotionals. I love to go on sit my front porch swing. When we downsized our house about 4 years ago, I was like, I want a porch and I want to put a swing out there. And that was the first thing I did like for right away. And I love sitting out there. And it's fun too, because sometimes people we're in a walking community. So people walk by, I'm like, hey, how are you doing? So it's such a
Yeah.
great way to start the morning. And I have this thing so one of the things I do is if I start having sabotaging thoughts or things are not good thoughts for me, I have this little stopgap. I call her Betsy. And I'm like, she shows up. I'm like, oh, Betsy, we're not coming in the world today. So you're not
Yeah.
allowed here today. So I have things like that I
Yeah.
work on and I love to do. And so we'll put in your book, but remind everybody, we'll put everything in the show notes. Remind everybody how they can reach out to you and where they can
Absolutely.
find your book.
Yep, absolutely. So first of all, I have a guest, let me try that again. I have a gift for your guest. The recovering perfectionist in me would have worried about that little stumble there, but no need to now. If you just go to www.downloadthepod.com, I really give you a 3-part series on how to overcome self-sabotage in some of those big areas like stress and imposter syndrome and community that I talked about earlier. And then you're always welcome to go to GoAbundanceWomen.com as well and check out our events, check out everything about it, connect with us, apply, have a meeting with us, and we'll definitely do our best to guide you in what we believe is the best fit for you.
Awesome. So we'll make sure to put all that in the show notes and you guys go grab that free download. I think it's going to be a powerful one to review. And so before we close out the show for our listeners, yes, we did tell Kelly we're going to do our cards again. So if
Yeah,
you're new to us, we always close the show out with these cards. Are called Better Questions,
love
BetterLife.com.
it.
My friend Diane Allen and my
That's
really good
a
friend
good
Carol
one,
Gill,
Pearl.
they created these, and so you can go online. I get nothing kickback, but these are so powerful. So there are over 70 cards. I keep half upstairs and half downstairs, so I have them with me. So I'm going to shuffle. You tell me when to stop, and we'll go through it. So here we go.
All right, stop.
All right. So your question is, what are my opportunities?
Ooh, what are my opportunities? I could take this in multiple different directions right now. So I tend to look at challenges that I'm facing as opportunities. So rather than having problems, but I would say my greatest opportunity right now is to settle the part of me that wants more clarity and certainty now, and it's definitely coming up for me recently. I've been pushing myself a little bit outside of my comfort zone. I've been traveling for seven of the last 8 weeks, and just I would say doing bigger things. I'm in a 4-part documentary. I've got, finishing this book and whatnot. And so my greatest opportunity right now in my life is just number one, finishing this book. And then I call it fine tuning my abundance, because I'm feeling my body get really uncomfortable with the amount of uncertainty that I have, and it wants me to do something about it. And I'm really having to retrain it that you don't need to do anything. You just need to trust. And when you can't let go anymore, let go more. And just know that everything that you could imagine is coming or more.
I love that. Let go more. That's
Oh,
yeah, that's so true.
yeah.
That's so amazing.
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you for being on today. This has
What a
been so
blessing
much fun.
today.
I know our listeners and our viewers on our YouTube channel should have gotten a lot out of this. They probably took a ton of notes, because I know I did as well. And I just want to remind everybody, if you enjoyed today, like and subscribe down below. Share out everything our podcast and our YouTube with everybody. And I just want to remind you that as you come into this world, you are a little rough on the outside. You have this oyster, a hard shell you have to open. But as you open it and work into things like we've shared today, you will find your inner pearly greatness. And I hope you guys go out today and find your inner pearly greatness.
I love it. Thank you so much,
Thank
Pearl.
you.